So, Dave, I'm thinking about playing a barbarian in the next campaign.
That's cool. Barbarians are tough, and they hit a lot for a lot of damage. They're great to play.
Dave, I said barbarian?
Oh, like we did in that character discussion a while back.
You guessed it.
Sounds like we should do a character build guide for the Bardbarian in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and as usual, I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Hey, want to tune up your D&D knowledge? Then move on over to that subscribe button and fill your YouTube feed.
No need to rage on Nerdarchy. If you miss those videos, just click on that notification bell so you'll never miss another one.
All right, so we're going to be kind of redoing a build we did way back when before we were doing the guides, which means we're going to be making the Bardbarian, but you're going to be able to download the progression build guide plus the NPC over on the DM's Guild. It's pay what you want, so pay nothing or $1 million, pay what you want. There's also going to be the character sheet down in the description, and it's only fair that we mention that D&D Beyond is a sponsor for this video. It is a D&D Beyond character sheet where we build the character out, where you can check it out. You can see how we do it, what it looks like at the end, as well as, you know what, while you're there, you might as well sign up for D&D Beyond because it's an awesome resource. It's got everything official from Wizards of the Coast over there for Dungeons and Dragons. It's something that we use all the time to build our characters, build encounters, make our campaigns. It's a ton of fun.
Frankly, it makes playing D&D, super easy. You can roll your dice right there on the character sheet, and it'll do the math for you. It just makes the game that much better, that much easier. You have to check out D&D Beyond.
All right, so we're going to jump into it. So, you know what? If we're playing a Bardbarian, that leads me to believe we're going to be needing Bard levels as well as Barbarian levels.
Indeed. So that means, we're going to be looking at races that are going to offer us, the options of both strength and charisma, because we're going to need that for being able to play that kind of character. Multi-class rules are pretty set. We're going to need those stats. So getting those bonuses, getting us right off the start is going to be super helpful.
Yeah, so races like Half-Elf, Fallen Aasimar, Dragonborn, Triton, Changeling, Azuriel, Tiefling, all of these will probably be things that you're going to be looking to pick from. So with that, obviously we discussed class options, right? It's just a matter of what subclasses are we going to go with. And then, what kind of barbarian or bard background options do you think are going to work for those classes?
So really, the background doesn't really enter into, the equation. There's nothing that we need from a background, for making this, it was like, all right, well, where do you want to start? If you go with Bard, so going with Outlander with Bard would be like a perfect fit so that right off the bat, you can feel like I'm kind of, outdoorsy and, savage. And I've got the entertaining factor built right in. But if you want to go with Barbarian first, then you could be like, oh, well, let me go with Entertainer. And it's just the opposite. You've already got the Barbarian fixed down, but getting access to performance and already doing entertaining fits naturally. But anything is going to work here.
So usually when we do these character builds, we usually have this specific concept in mind, this high concept, and it's very specific. In this case, it's not so much. It's like, we just want to be able to say we are a Bardbarian, right? It's corny, it's lame, but it's what makes us happy. So we don't have to go after as many different options as we usually do. So before we get into the rest of the progression, let's go over the stats we're going to start with.
Sure. So with the physical, went with a 14 strength, a 10 dexterity, and a 13 constitution.
Mentals, intelligence of 12, wisdom of 8, and charisma of 15. If you are a savant of multiclass and you understand how that works, looking at those stats is going to tell you something. We're going to get a bonus to strength. We're going to get a bonus to charisma. If we're doing a lot of multiclasses, they're going to have to be either strength or charisma based off of these stats. I don't think con ever factors in. We're
going to have that odd man out. Now, we did have that race option of Triton, which would give us, some plus ones. But, that's not what we're looking at. We're going to go in another direction.
And we're going to go for that race. We're going to go with Dragonborn, and we're going to go with Silver. And we're going to go with Silver because I think Ted felt bardy.
It felt bardy, and I'm going to spoil some of Dave's surprise. Dave was interested in making this character a little bit more skald-like, the warrior bard that's out and cares about, the information of history and telling of the tales that fits with a bard and it fits with a barbarian. So to me, the silver dragonborn feels like the most inclined to go towards history. So why this one particular went towards barbarian and away from some of the roots of, that culture, we aren't quite sure, but that's not for us to decide. That's when you decide to play him, you can fill in those details.
So, speaking of which, another curveball is the background. We went sage instead of the ones we mentioned. We're like, well, you know what? If they're more like a Scot or an orator, they keep an oral tradition of the histories of their people. Sage actually seemed like it fit and made sense. We're going to get Arcana and History from there. We're going to get 2 languages, which we're going to take Dwarf and Elf. Basically, they just communicate with people around them and know how to do that. And now we're going to start building this character out. You start with our class. Where you want to start?
So with this, we're actually going to look at Barbarian right off the bat. And that's going to give us 2 skills. So we're going to take Athletics and Intimidation. This character is a little bit bulky, a little bit strong, but also intimidating. It's got a presence to work into. So we're going to double down on both Strength and Charisma with our skills.
Not only are we going to start with Barbarian, we're actually going to take our first 5 levels in Barbarian. And we're going to get all the normal Barbarian stuff from that. Which it actually doesn't matter for this build so much because we just really want to be able to say we are a barbarian and that's what's important to us. But one of the things that we might as well bring up is 3rd level is when we get our primal path.
So for this one, I kind of was a little torn as to what direction to go. I felt everything could kind of work, with a Skald. You could go Path of the Ancients and, consult the spirits. You could go with totems and really dive into that. But, since we're looking at combining it with Bard, Bard has access to magic. Bard has access to the inspiration. So the Path of the Wild Magic Barbarian, I felt was a doubling down on the inspiration and that, shared die mechanic that I felt would really complement this particular character well. So that's the direction we chose to go.
Now, also, it's only fair that we mention that we are using the optional rules from Tasha's. Which gives us access to another skill. We took nature, just kind of going along with this character's being really cerebral and knowledgeable. So, if you're not using the optional rules for Tasha, you would just nix that one. 4th level was a great level for us because we get our first ASI. We decided to take a feat. And we took Dragon Fear because it's just an awesome Dragonborn feat where instead of using your breath weapon to do damage, you can do a roar instead and frighten anyone you want within 30 feet of you. They make a wisdom saving throw. Good times. It's also a half feat, and we can get a bonus to our constitution, which we have a 13 and crank that up to a 14.
The real, joy here is it really makes, the Dragonborn aspect of this character really begin to shine. And, we are advancing on this path of barbarian and, but it gets us ready as we take proficiency with nature. We take, this inherent Dragonborn feat, we get to 5th level where we continue with barbarian so that we get extra attack so that from our martial standpoint, we are still staying in line with all of the other characters that, would be getting extra attack. Where do we go from here?
From here, we're going to take 3 levels of Bard. Now we are officially, actually at level 6, we're kind of officially done because we are a Bardbarian for everything that really matters for this character. But, that wouldn't be too fun. So we're going to take 3 levels of Bard. The important thing is when we get to 8th level, our 3rd level, we're going to go College of Swords. This allows us to do our blade flourishes, and we spend inspiration to do them. So we can do that while we're raging. One of the downfalls to being a Bardbarian is spellcasting. You cannot do it while you're raging. You cannot concentrate while you're raging. Whatever spells we take, we would want them to be spells that we can cast before we rage. They don't require concentration. Also, one of the things we're leaning heavily into is ritual casting and taking and knowing spells that can be cast as rituals just so that we can use them outside of combat. And that's where we want our spellcasting to kind of come into play, or maybe when we get to that next thing we're going to tell you about.
So before we get into that, though, we do see this as a bard. You're going to need perform, get a skill and a musical instrument. So we took drum, we took performance when we got bard at first level. These are things that really attribute to that, kind of scald character. We're going to get a fighting style. We took dueling. More sword and board type character. And, perhaps they're even, beating a rhythm, their blade to their shield as they're going about doing stuff. But Dave says, we're kind of going to move in a slightly different direction now that we've fulfilled that bard and barbarian aspect. So when we get to 9th level, we're actually going to divert our way away from bard and barbarian, and we're going to take 2 levels of paladin. Dave, why are we doing this?
Well, as we mentioned, one of the problems is we're going to have a bunch of spell slots, but we can't actually use them in combat. But if we take 2 levels of Paladin, it's going to do 2 things for us. It's going to give us another fighting style, which we're going to take defense. We're going to be wearing some armor, so it'll increase our armor class. And we're also going to get Divine Smite. Now we no longer care that we're raging and cannot cast spells, because we are just going to smite. We can combine smites and blade flourishes and rage all day long. I think when we finally finish this build, we're going to end up with something like 10 smites a day we can use, spells we can cast. Did I mention too, a lot of the spells we chose for our known spells are ritual spells, so it doesn't actually matter that we run out of spell slots for those. Oh, did I also mention that we are now a 10th level character? We could be done, right? We could have all our ragey, smitey, blade flourishy damage right now and not go any further. And we've built essentially an effective character with these 10 levels. So that means, like, even if you're not playing a super high level game, that this build will still be useful.
Still get all of the aspects. So you don't need to play all the way to 20 levels, just to be able to use what this is designed to do. But if you're happen to playing a long campaign, where do we go from here?
We're going to go back to Bard for 2 levels, and then we're going to be done with Bard. And the reason why we need to go back to Bard is, 1, we want to get our ASI. We're going to boost our charisma because we want to be able to do more blade flourishes or have inspiration to give out. So that's really important. Then 5th level in Bard, which is our 12th level, is great because that means we get our bardic inspiration back on a short rest, and our bardic inspiration die goes up.
And then from here, it's a pretty easy peasy path. We're just going to take Barbarian out to the end. We're going to get all of the things that Barbarian is going to give you, but it's going to give us a couple, more ASIs to choose from. We're going to continue with that first bump going to Charisma. And then, when we get to 19th level, we're going to get that last ASI. And we kind of hemmed and hawed as to where this was going to go. And at first, Dave was like, all right, let's put it in Constitution. We're a 19th level character. How many things are we needing from Con at this point in time? So I was like, well, if we just want hit points, why not take tough and get double?
Yeah, it just made a lot of sense. And before that, we got another skill. Again, that's from Tasha's. So if you're not using Tasha's, just ignore that line. So this one's finished at 20th level. We get all the cool things that bards and barbarians can do. And with a little sprinkle of Paladin in there for extra damagey goodness and armor class. Now we get to the part where we're going to say, what do we do with this character as an NPC?
So, most of the times, when I think about, Dragonborn, a lot of times I've been attributing them almost to the nobility. They're dragons, to some extent. But to me, looking at this character, what if we have a group, a tribe of Dragonborns that, live out, in the wilderness, on the plain, wherever they decide to dwell. And this is their orator. This is their historian. And this is a proud tradition. Are they a warfaring people? Are they not? This dude's a barbarian. So perhaps they are. So maybe this is somebody you meet and you're on neutral ground, or maybe, it's at a high time where we're not going to be fighting. It's come to a meet. You've come to negotiate. So this could be somebody that, you see in full regalia, doing their thing, and they're telling the history of their people, when you walk into their camp. I think it could be a cool thing. Or the flip side is they're totally leading a raid on a village, and this is like their leader, their champion.
Yeah, that definitely works. And also the idea that this is their storyteller, their historian, but he's also kind of a badass as well. And your players might even meet him on the battlefield, maybe as an ally. And this guy is like ripping through enemies. One of the other tribesmen are like, hey, we need to go talk to our lore keeper, for what you seek. They're kind of expecting to go to the village nerd, right? And instead, it's this guy that they saw being impressive on the battlefield, roaring, causing fear, and they're doing all kinds of cool things that you could do with this. Like I said, we saw it like as a kind of a skull type character. But again, you can encounter this as if these barbaric dragonborn are adversaries. Like this could be their leader, as a role-playing thing where they have to go and convince this NPC to give them the information they need. And you have to kind of like role play it out. And then they could possibly even turn into a quest giver.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to use this one. I love, warrior skalds. They're just an amazing character. Definitely fits into, any D&D setting, and gonna turn, the dragonborn on their sides a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong in my general perception, but I'm in love with this, tribesman, group of dragonborn. And I just need to figure out where I'm gonna, put these in my world.
Sounds good.
So if you happen to like this video and you want to check out our original discussion for the Bardbarian, it's going to be right around here.
If you'd like to see us continue to make content like this, please consider supporting us over on Patreon.
As a special thank you, our patrons receive monthly rewards for 5th edition D&D, monthly giveaways, and access to our monthly fan game, and more.
So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.